Hey everybody, this is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. So Eric, yet again, we've got the uh, the rolling in and out of government into corporate America, lobbying for foreign interests with this headline: former U.S. officials work for Chinese clients stirs concern over disclosure loopholes regarding Loretta Lynch, who we know was Barack Obama's attorney general. And it looks like she's got herself some work with a Chinese drone company that's come under scrutiny over its alleged ties to China's military. So, Eric, look, this is just another enemy of America. And I wanted to take this as an example to talk about the many enemies of America. Loretta Lynch is just the latest, but let's start with her and let's move on to others such as Chevron and how they're working against American interests for their own corporatist objectives.
Yeah, well, Loretta Lynch, former attorney general, supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, is a paid advocate for DJI, China's largest drone maker, also the largest maker of their drones used as attack drones by the PLA, and they are. I think she's advocating for them to be allowed to compete for U.S. Pentagon contracts, and so that's actually what she's litigating and disputing against the Pentagon for. This is unbelievable. The gall of the people that are paid as paid lobbyists to advocate for things that are so patently obvious against the interest of American security. I wonder how much she's paid and what is the cost of flipping on America like that.
Yeah, and so what's very interesting is, according to this report, it appears as if she is not filed under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, because that includes an exemption for commercial activities and legal representation, which seems like a real joke to me. But of all the companies to represent, of all the foreign companies, Eric, to represent in this day and age, a Chinese drone company, especially when we learned about China sending their weather balloon over the U.S. in early 2023, clearly they're testing us and looking for opportunities. And she's representing that company and that technology. It's outrageous, but it's just so typical of these Washington elites who will trade in their experience and their prestige and their relationships. By the way, relationships is the most important thing I think she's trading off of, just like Hunter Biden did when his father was vice president.
Well, DJI, the Chinese company, is also providing tens of thousands of drones per month to the Russian armed forces, which they are modifying and sending into battle in Ukraine. So, yeah, it's like Rolodex treason. It's a Rolodex, renting those relationships, using that influence, and navigating the U.S. system to literally the highest bidder. In this case, I do wonder what the bid price was for her legal representation. So yes, she's not lobbying, but she's litigating on behalf of a Chinese company directly, closely aligned with the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army. Not a good look. In Venezuela, again, we've touched on this before. But there was sanctions against the Maduro regime because they've been stealing the elections now for the last 25 years in Venezuela. And they cynically last fall agreed with the Biden administration that the Bidens would drop sanctions in exchange for them having an election. So they had this election this last July 28th in Venezuela. Sanctions were removed, and sure enough, the socialist, the Maduro cartel, stole the election. Now, as part of those sanctions being removed, companies like Chevron and Sargent Oil were granted waivers to be operating and pumping Venezuelan oil, making tens, hundreds of millions of dollars from that. And to this day, are still doing so, even though it's blatantly obvious that the Maduro cartel stole the election. This one, they lost by 40 points. The opposition won 70% of the votes. Maduro and his cronies won 30% of the vote. So literally a 70-30, clearly a lopsided loss, but the Maduro cartel is being enabled to stay there by lobbying money paid to more Washington lobbyists by Chevron and by Sergeant Oil. If we go through the list of the board of directors of Chevron, it's a who's who of corporate America. People like the former CEO of Lockheed Martin. Now they're directly making money off of a company doing a huge chunk of their business from a Marxist socialist country, Venezuela, whose main allies are Iran, Cuba, Russia, and China.
Yeah, and that's Marilyn Hewson you're referring to, who's now on the board of directors for Chevron. And naturally, the Biden-Harris regime has taken no definitive steps against Maduro, even though we are now at 4 to 5 months after the stolen, rigged election in Venezuela. And look, hats off to you, Eric, because you've been one of the great champions for the Venezuelan people in their pursuit of freedom. And I just hope that time will be an adversary for Maduro, and eventually we can get him taken out and get the people in charge, like in other countries, in El Salvador and Argentina, in South America, where we've got great success stories where the people got freedom and economic prosperity is coming back.
Yeah. But again, freedom in Venezuela is not promoted or enabled by U.S. companies selling out to the highest bidder and taking money from a Marxist dictatorship, which is what it is. Look, the Maduro cartel has stolen the last 3 elections. This one, even more blatantly obvious than the others, having lost it 70-30, still ignoring the will of the people. That by definition is a dictatorship. They've incarcerated thousands and thousands of people. It's unacceptable, and it cannot be allowed to stand and persist. And again, companies, whether it's against Chevron and Sergeant Oil, Harry Sargent. I know Harry Sargent. He's a nice guy, but he's on the wrong side of this one. And I'm sure when the Venezuelan people are actually breathing free again, they're going to remember who was enabling the socialist dictatorship to keep power over them. And they will remember who their friends are. And Sergeant Oil and Chevron and the board members of Chevron are clearly not friends of freedom.
Well, we see the fruits of socialist policies just this week in Cuba, where they had yet another nationwide blackout. No energy production at all in the state of Cuba.
Look, Cuba is just farther along down the spiral than Venezuela is. Cuba is a full-on Marxist, socialist, Bolshevik-run country along the lines of what the Soviet Union was. And they are collapsing. They're hungry. I go to Miami and I have Cuban taxi drivers that say that they have to send bags of sugar to their family members in Cuba. Now imagine, Cuba was known for growing sugar for the rum trade, and now they can't even get something as basic as sugar in Cuba that has to be sent to them from their family members in Miami. Cuba is truly a socialist hellhole, and it's spiraling. And I hope the people of Cuba will rise up and rid themselves of their Marxist oppressors soon. A free Cuba without the nonsense of the socialist revolution would be a very good thing for the Western Hemisphere, and it would even go further to get rid of both Venezuela and Cuban communist dictatorships. Enough.
Yeah, and here's let's exit on this topic, Eric, with our discussion about enemies of America here on Off Leash. It seems obvious to me that a company like Chevron, Sergeant Oil, and now this case with Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General of the United States, representing the drone manufacturer from China, seems to me like this is just a classic case of they knew they would get away with it under this Biden-Harris regime. The mice will play while the cat's away because Joe Biden is asleep at the wheel and Kamala Harris is trying to replace him running for president right now. Obviously, we need some major reforms. I will venture to guess that Loretta Lynch probably still has her security clearance intact, just like the 51 former intelligence officials who were able to successfully help stifle the Hunter Biden story, the laptop story, in October of 2020 that the New York Post published, and they claimed that it was Russian disinformation. They have their security clearances, and those should be stripped from every one of those guys, from Loretta Lynch and anybody else who is trading their prestige and their contacts. Like you said, I love this phrase about Rolodex treason. We're going to add that to our list of Prince-isms. But clearly, we need some major reforms to get this revolving door shut.
Yeah, and the ridiculous thing about the Hunter laptop story is many of them still claim that they were right in claiming that, even though Hunter Biden and his attorney have sued the computer repair shop to get their laptop back. So the disconnect there is amazing. That whole the letter with the 51 intelligence officials, it was all just a psyop. It was a lie in the middle of a campaign to cover up a really ugly blemish against the Biden family and to keep the truth from coming out. And again, shame on them, enemies of freedom.
Yeah, and by the way, that PSYOP was engineered and led by no other than the current Secretary of State, Antony Blinken.
Yeah, and allowed to get away with it by a very compliant, complicit mainstream media. Shame on them all.
His good work in that campaign, he got a promotion. Well, I think we need to strip some security clearances from all these traitors of America that we've been discussing here on Off Leash. But that's it for this discussion today. Don't forget to get your unplugged phone at unplugged.com/offleash. We look forward to the next time. That's it for us here on Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano.